Margot said, I'm Christy, super happy to be here. I'm currently the Chief Customer Officer for Toptal, the world's largest fully remote workforce. Toptal is a freelance platform. We have highly talented people from developers to designers, product managers, business strategists, and more. And what we do day to day is support our clients by matching them with these high caliber global talent from our vetted network. And today, yes, we are talking about borderless hiring, which I hope will be beneficial to those of you who are here. Thank you again for joining. Um, these words on the slide, I think these are things that are top of mind for me as a leader, and I know they are probably top of mind for many of you as well. Remote work, evolving technologies, generative AI. I don't know if there can be a presentation these days that doesn't say the words chat GPT. If you haven't tried it yet, it's pretty neat. Talent shortages, the potential economic downturn. These are all things that are top of mind for me, and they often keep me out at night. And right now, I think it is more important to get impactful, efficient, cost effective access to the best talent. It is a critical competitive advantage, I think, to many businesses if you can embrace what we call borderless hiring. So at Toptal, we've really seen the impacts of the growth in borderless hiring firsthand. Those numbers are real. In the past few years, we've had massive growth in the number of project engagements and talent applications. So 175%, 200%, and those are not on small bases by any means. We have been fully remote since its inception. Toptal in 2010 is when it was founded. And now we have a workforce that spans more than 140 countries and a total remote workforce of more than 7,000 people, including our core team and talents currently with active engagements. Okay, so what is this term, borderless hiring? I'd like to think the name sounds somewhat self-evident, but the concept is still seemingly one that I don't think everyone's grasped in reality. Borderless hiring really means that your business is able to hire the exact right person for a given job, no matter where they live. Every company can now tap into this international talent pool thanks to the mass adoption of remote work. I'd like to think it's a slight silver lining that came from the pandemic. We no longer, you don't have to ask people to relocate. You don't have to ask them to move with their entire family, and you don't have to restrict yourself to a 20-mile radius around headquarters and ask people to do that long, awful commute that we were probably all once accustomed to many years back. This borderless hiring ethos and really embracing it, I think will help companies find the best talent for their needs, even if those workers live right outside your door or across the other side of the world. Okay, so let's talk about some of the benefits, many of which I just mentioned, but really want to hammer these points home. So, one of the biggest benefits of borderless hiring is this access to this larger talent pool. And despite current news, we've all seen the headlines of the tech industry layoffs. That demand for specialized talent has not slowed. And if you actually look at those industries outside of tech too, they are still growing and still looking for these very specialized talent with very specific skills. We love data. So if you actually look at the data, the research suggests that we are likely to face a global shortage of skilled talent that could reach tens of millions by 2030. Like tens of millions. It's a lot of people. And more than that, I'm sure for many of you who are listening, those that have actually tried to hire either recently or in the past, you know that finding that perfect high quality match for some of those skill sets, it feels nearly impossible in certain markets. And so we know companies should not restrict themselves to this local talent pool. Just think about the talent you can access if you really cast the widest net possible, the globe. Um, I'd like to show you this. If you go the route of borderless hiring, not only do you have access to great talent, but really in our experience, we've found that many of the best talent have chosen to go remote. These people are actively making the decision to balance their life, their lifestyles, work from anywhere, whenever they want, wherever they want. This is a talent. She's in our network and has been for a while. This is Elena. She is a great example of this solution to the talent shortage problem. She was living in Moldova. She moved to Spain and joined our talent network after nearly 15 years in executive roles. She's been head of sales, CEO, and partner for a startup. And she's currently a senior growth product manager for one of our largest healthcare clients. Her professional experience is just it's so unique, and it continually generates consistently meeting impacts for our clients. And she again has spanned so many different roles in our network. um, these skilled workers like Elena, they exist in every country around the globe, and really now remote work has given access to all of these people. Okay, we are at a Women in Tech conference, so I'd be remiss if I did not talk about diversity. Another obvious benefit, I think, of borderless hiring. It's again this access to talent that can be assembled to build teams with so many diverse backgrounds, not only in gender, but just in background, culture, nationality. So if we dig in a little bit more into the diversity aspect of things, um, hiring people with diverse perspectives and experiences can spark new ideas for products and services. It's so great, especially at Toptal. We have this global network of talent in our network, but our teams are truly global. So we're often on Zoom meetings where every single Zoom box is someone from a different country, and you really can reveal certain unconventional solutions and different ideas that you might have not thought of otherwise. Um, it also it offers organizations just a deeper and more nuanced understanding of different cultures, which could very well improve your ability to compete in different global markets. Um, and I'm sure many of you have seen data around diverse teams and their ability to outperform those that are not. And it leads to honestly, it leads to higher profitability and better financial performance. And there's lots of reports out there that say as such. So diversity is I know I'm talking to many people who agree, considering you're at this conference, but diversity really can promote better performance for your organizations. Okay, another one. Um, Borderless hiring, it impacts people's careers. Meritocracy is what it says here. A true corporate meritocracy can only exist truly when the best person for the job is hired for every role. And again, I think when you look at, a talent pool without borders, you're able to find truly that best talent for the role. Um, So with borderless hiring and remote work, it really isn't about where you are or who you know. It's about your talent. And I know these are the words that are on the slide, but it's really true. If you think about, like the people you have in your organization right now, think about what you could achieve if you just drop the borders of the office of again that local net that you're used to casting, and just think about truly promoting a meritocracy and looking at the people who are in your network or outside that you could have access to just based on their talent and their skills. I realize I kind of flew through that, but want to spark a bunch of discussion around, hopefully around borderless hiring, because we really feel like here at Toptal, it is the future of tech. Remote work, especially post-pandemic, we know is the future of the workforce in general. Um, our talent network at Toptal, it's an example of a global distributed workforce that is uniquely equipped to meet the needs of our clients. We see it every day. We are constantly matching unique talent with skill sets and diverse backgrounds with the client needs and the demands that we are getting from our clients every day. And the best of the best can be brought together from all over the world with remote work, um, as we do believe it's the future of tech. So I hope this was somewhat inspiring. I feel like I'd love to open it up for a discussion about some ideas and how you or your organization can employ some of these concepts. We know at TopTal it has been and can be a true major game changer um, for those who decide to embrace it.
Thank you so much, Christy. I think lots of points to unpack there. I'm sure there's questions starting to come through. Many people just kind of saying they're really looking forward to seeing more of what you're talking about, like come to life around them, I think, in their organizations and things like that. But I do have a couple questions here for you. So, do you think that this concept of borderless hiring is going to help accelerate the movement for more women in tech? Do you think it's affiliated at all to what we're kind of talking about here?
I do. It's a really good question, and I do think, um, there's lots of data around the pandemic, especially for women, where there was probably a disproportionate number of women that unfortunately left the workforce during the pandemic, and that's when remote work, I think, really started to take off. At the same time, there are so many upsides to remote work, especially for women. I think in terms of like the concept of remote work. It allows people to be more flexible in terms of their work output, when they get their work done, where they can do that. And it's more about results and less about FaceTime, less about when you're actually online. And as long as you get your work done, that's what truly the value you can add to a company. Um, for women in particular, I think it's very interesting. There's the little things that remote work and Zoom and these interesting virtual meetings can do, right? Like there's equality in just one Zoom box. It doesn't have to be the proverbial seat around the table or the literal getting a seat at the table. There's equality in a person per box. And I find that it's also sometimes even easier to jump in to say something because Zoom etiquette will have you mute until it is your turn to speak. And so I think it might be easier to jump in, unmute yourself, and then people have kind of an indicator that you are ready to speak and to voice your idea. So I think there's a bunch of things around remote work that could help people of many different backgrounds, but women in particular.
Yeah, really interesting. There was a panel today, actually this morning, a meet and greet with Toptal, and some of the women in that panel were talking about how, similar to what you were saying, that when they're in a remote environment, working for clients that they're working with from somewhere else, they're able to kind of decide when they want to join that conversation of being a woman in tech because they have this like breadth. Whereas when you're in an office, if someone wants to come over and bring that up with you or make it about the fact that you're a woman in tech, you're kind of present in it and you have to deal with it then and there. And maybe they don't always have the energy to be the woman in tech. And so having this like space in between remotely, they found it gave them the opportunity to decide when they wanted to raise their hand to be that role.
Yes, it makes a ton of
So that,
sense.
yeah, it was really interesting. Okay, Chrissy, switching gears from that question a little bit, we have a question come through here. How do you hire in a borderless way and build company culture? This came from Amber Mack, who is in our audience today.
Great question. Toptal, we have a wonderful chief people officer that probably speaks at many of these conferences, but having a very engaged culture, we have very distinct cultural attributes that we use during our hiring process. And then there's many different ways just in general to promote a very strong remote work culture. Um, we have the typical, interest groups, if you will. We have like the pet lovers channel and the cooking channel and things like that for certain interests. But I think actually what's even more important to me when I'm hiring and when I'm looking for roles in particular is that culture of a desire for output and results. And TopTel is really about that. The pace of the company is so quick. And again, we align around these cultural attributes. So I think the hiring process is very, very robust and specific. We tell a lot of folks this during the initial interview process that, like remote is not necessarily for everyone. I wish it were. And certain people who really need that, even like people who are probably a little bit more junior in their tenure, who need kind of to sit next to someone and say like, oh, well, how are you doing that, what are you doing, um, who need that in-person face-to-face interaction. It might not be right for everyone. So I think making sure that during your hiring process you are very clear around company cultural norms. Is it okay to ping someone and hop on Zoom in a minute? Do you expect them to be online during your working hours? At TopTel, we do. So typically during your own, regular daytime working hours, expecting people to be online so you can hop into a casual conversation if need be, just like you would in an office. But just setting those expectations very clearly in advance in terms of the type of culture that you are trying to provide for your people when you are remote and when you are embracing borderless hiring, is just starting off with a strong culture and being very upfront about that when you're doing your hiring.
Great. I think, Christy, that really parlays into the next question that we had here, and maybe there's some overlap, but asking what are some issues with meritocracy? Like, and then maybe there's a follow up here. How do we change over to that thinking even before going necessarily to remote? Because if that's what you have to have as the base, what can you do to tee that up with your organization if that's something you're thinking of kind of switching over to?
Yes. Over the past few years, I think I've had many teams that really emphasize meritocracy through very clear metrics. Um, while this is not exactly the topic, but metrics I think can help with borderless hiring in terms of your just setting very clear expectations when you are hiring, when you are promoting, when you are managing teams. Having clear qualitative and quantitative metrics allow or quantitative metrics, but then qualitative milestones or attributes of a person, their character, things that they're doing above and beyond, how they own initiatives from end to end, and how they really show results. By being very clear with those things, I think you can really promote a true meritocracy because it should not matter again your age, your gender, your any other cultural attributes that you have. It should really matter about, again, the quantitative metrics and then the qualitative bits around how you've delivered output and results. Shouldn't depend on even your tenure within the company. Of course, you have to have some tenure to prove your results in a certain organization, but the sooner you prove those results and you have something to show for what you've done against those expectations, that that is likely the best foundation for meritocracy before you can even, yes, embrace the concept of borderless hiring.
Yeah. And Christy, really just testing you here with one last question. When it comes to borderless hiring, some people have a bit of a fear of what are the legal implications? That sounds like it must be complex to be allowed to do that. How does that work? Any kind of basic like understanding that you can give us of what we need to know to get started with that from kind of that legal perspective without obviously having a lawyer here in the room with us?
It's fine. I'm not a lawyer, so I would defer to our general counsel on that.
Yeah.
It's a very good question.
Yeah.
There are also, and this is probably a shameless plug for Toptal, there are very there are platforms such as Toptal that really I'm not sure if you teed that up for me, Margot. There are platforms like Toptal that really we call extricate that level of complexity and help you do that, right? Like take care of the payments, take care of the legal contracting. How do you pay someone who is in a country that you've never hired from before, that you have no existing talents in? And so again, there are platforms. There are also third-party, software platforms and whatnot that can help you do that as well if you're thinking about hiring from a specific regional location. But we can tell you from the insides of Toptal that it is very region specific. Every region has their own rules and regulations and laws, which is, um, what makes the world interesting. But again, I think there's lots of resources that can help you facilitate payment, contracts, et cetera, just to make sure that both the organization and the talent are obviously protected and have the correct rights appropriate to them.
Right. Okay. And we actually have time to squeeze in one last one here. Someone's wondering, this is all great, borderless hiring. You talked about culture, but do you ever actually meet up in real life also? And then they said, I think I heard that you'll be at Web Summit in Lisbon. Christy, do you meet up in real life as well?
Margot and I were both at Web Summit in Lisbon was that November? And
November.
I plan to be there as well this year. We do meet up in person. So we have no office and it's great. We do two things. We do local meetups. So top tellers who are I think in the East Coast, for example, where I am, we have a meetup coming up and we'll be scheduled with, sometimes there's 20 or 30 people there in a certain region. But we do have offsites as well. That are planned by team. And then, yes, we do have that face to face because despite the fact that I do believe I built so many remote relationships that are very, very strong, despite the fact that I've only talked to people over Zoom. But having that face-to-face contact, especially with your team, your direct reports, or your lane managers, those relationships are still much strengthened when you meet face-to-face. And so we have regular offsites, or when you meet up at conferences, for example, that's another really great way to make sure you just get a little bit of FaceTime that helps you carry and strengthen that relationship all the way through when you're working together remotely and or asynchronously.
Great. Thank you so much, Christy, for fielding all these questions for us here today and being part of the Women Tech Global Conference this year.
Thank you, Margot, for hosting.
Bye for now.